Hi, my name is John Burks. I'm a financial analyst, and I'm creating a series of videos with different softwares. Now, this is the Visual Basics tutorial, and this is one of the outputs from the Alteryx model. And in that particular last presentation, I showed you that one of the tabs, it was formatted into this table. And not all the tabs were formatted, but I will show you how to use Visual Basics to formulate all these tabs, because sometimes when you generate an output, it'll be a little bit cumbersome to actually have to format each one individually. So that's where Visual Basics come in handy, because it cuts down the time and it makes everything a lot more efficient because it automates the process. Now, Visual Basics is the programming language of Excel and other Office programs. Now, you can do macro a couple of ways. You can input it directly into Visual Basics, or you can record it. And then if you wanted to record an actual macro, you would go to your View tab, hit Macro, hit Record, and then if you hit Record, you put in the macro name, you hit a short key if you wanted to create a short key. Okay. Now the only thing is that when you record a macro, sometimes it gives you information that you don't necessarily need. Okay. And then I'll show you that shortly. Now, to get into the actual macro, you would hit Alt F11. Okay. And then here's the editor. You have some windows to the side, and then I'm going to go to this module here. And then if you wanted to say protect your program, say if you were sending this information out to different people or to a person, and you wanted to protect the sheet, you can with a password. And you just hit come here, hit run. If a person puts in the password wrong, okay, it's going to ask them to put the password in again, and then what it's going to do is going to protect all the sheets, so that way the person can't make any changes to it if the wrong person receives it. Okay. Now to unprotect this, I can run this macro to unprotect the sheets. Put in the right password, and then it's going to unprotect my sheets. Okay. All the sheets are unprotected. Now I can write in here. Okay. And then say you wanted to just create some type of a message box to make it more user friendly for the end user in the interface. I'm going to run this. It's going to ask you my name, John Burks. Yes. Oh, it's going to say I must be psychic. So that's just another thing that you can do. Now here's the actual macro for the create the table. Now you'll notice that this is very large and has a lot of rows in here, or commands that are not really necessary. I'm going to show you how to shorten this down. And then so I'm going to run that particular macro for 2013. And then it puts into a table. Okay. Now, when I run it for 2014, I will have a debug error because there are more lines in the 2014 data. That's the one thing about the macro. You have to either add more lines to it, or add the additional lines, or if you go down to this code here, what I'm doing is I'm creating a current region, so that way it doesn't matter what sheet that I'm on, it's going to pick all the data in the region. Okay, and as you can see, with what these green marks mean is that there's a lot of information that the macro put in there that I'm going to just comment out. That's why when you put a apostrophe in front of it, it turns it green, letting you know that it's not going to implement those commands. Okay. Now here's the actual short version of the macro. You can see that it's much shorter. And when you're dealing with big data, you want to that's very important, because sometimes if the commands are too long, then it could bog down your whole system. Okay, so I'm going to run the macro for 2013, and it puts it into the table, no problems. And I'm going to run it for 2014. And as you can see, there's no problems, and it formulates everything. Okay. And then if you wanted to reverse all this, so I'm going to reverse it back to the original sheet. I'm going to reverse this back to the original format. Okay. Now, say you want to know the total income, okay, on both sheets, on one sheet. So I would just run this macro here. This is the code for that. I'm going to blow this open a little bit so you can see it. So this is the macro for that. Okay. And I'm going to run it. There's my total revenues for 2013. And if I want to do it for 2014, there's my total revenues. Okay. And then a lot of managers like pivot tables, and in presentation pivot tables are great. So I'm going to create a pivot table. This one is for 2013, and sometimes you don't want to keep creating a pivot table over and over again every time you input the data. So that way, once the data is there, I can just run this macro, and it puts 2013 into a pivot table. And then this macro here puts 2014 also into a different pivot table. And that's the macro for the pivot tables. Okay. Like say I wanted to create a function to show the growth in, say, sales for 2013. I can do that because when you're in presentation, sometimes people want to see how your data would change. So this macro would show me if I had a 10% increase in sales, what would my 2013, what would the revenues now look like? So I put 10 in. So it would increase to that number. What's great about that is that you can have that number linked to different spreadsheets, so that way you can see how the entire financial data is changed. And this is a function that I created just to show you how you can create functions that are not formulas in Excel. And so this is the function I call iGrowth. And so if I take, say, equals iGrowth, okay, I created that function, and I want sum of this row and then and then 10, it should give me my new, there's my new growth rate, or my new sales revenues, and that's just based off of the formula I created. Okay, so this was VBA. It's very powerful. Excel is used, I don't think, in any, that's not in any company, but this VBA helps you automate the process to make it much more efficient, because sometimes you don't want to be stuck with just trying to formulate your data, because more time should be spent on analyzing and interpreting the data more so than just trying to formulate it. Okay, so I hope you enjoy, and I'll talk to you soon.